Very good afternoon. It's 2 p.m. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Lungilele Makakula. We are back again with another episode of Market View. Today, the Federation of Eswatini Business Community held their annual general meeting. In his remarks, the president, Tam Dupont, highlighted on last year's achievements, and these are the Vusumnotfo Expo, which was hosted at the Lubombo region last year. Also, the FESPIC's collaboration with the Eswatini Revenue Service to reduce constraints on trade. The president further mentioned the Citizens Economic Empowerment Act, which he said its enactment will make a good impact to small businesses in the country. In his address, he also reminded members of some of their failures, which led to FESPIC taking a huge strain last year. He made an example of the 2021 civil unrest and the COVID-19. Stay tuned for a detailed address of the president's remarks. And in our news today, we will have remarks also by Mavela Sikwane. And on our last segment, Senelis Via joins us via Zoom for today's financial markets. For now, let's kick off the episode with our first story after the break.
Let me ask you something. What if I said we could all be more productive, that we could do more, create more, or earn more without having to spend more time or effort we put into work? Sounds great, right? So how do we do it? How do we do more with less? For economists, boosting productivity is the trillion-dollar question. So what do I mean by productive? What exactly is productivity? Economists actually measure how many resources go into an economy and compare that to the value of goods and services coming out. And that's what's called total factor productivity. The better and more efficiently an economy uses its time and resources, the higher its productivity. Let me show you what I mean. What if I wanted to open a restaurant? What would I need? A budget, tools, some ingredients. Of course, you can't have a good meal without an experienced chef. Once we have those, my customers get a great dining experience, and my restaurant starts earning revenue. But there's so much more to running a restaurant than just good cooking. I have to spend time ordering ingredients, doing taxes, taking reservations, seating charts, property management, getting permits, renewing safety, managing, updating, hiring, and firing. Doing those things takes me time I'd rather spend making meals. Fewer meals means turning away customers and losing out on revenue. My productivity could be so much higher if I use technology to streamline those things. But I can go even further. Here in the kitchen, I can also use technology or hire someone to take over the routine tasks. So now I can focus on making the perfect meal. My kitchen, with all its fancy gadgets to help me out, isn't so different from how wealthy economies use technology, trade, or innovation to boost their productivity. But imagine I don't have these tools. That's a problem that many poorer countries face, and it's one that the IMF takes pretty seriously. Because without access to productivity boosters, they earn less, and so living standards remain low. There's no one solution. But we do know that investing in science, technology, and education does help our members to do more with less over the long term. It's investments in our future that'll make us all better off and give us more time to do the things we love.
Welcome back. This is Market View. Thank you for staying with us. Let's get into our business news. Local businesses must align with climate-conscious practices to unlock meaningful funding opportunities. This was the key message from Ben Simelane, who's the CEO of Facebook, who urged homegrown entrepreneurs to rethink outdated business models that contribute to environmental harm. Speaking at the Facebook annual general meeting, Simelane warned that investors are now prioritizing sustainable, socially responsible ventures. We're looking for businesses that are part of the solution, not the problem, when it comes to climate change, he said, signaling a shift in the investment landscape.
Sibambisene na Center for Financial Inclusion bakhulumile ngayo just now, CFI. I-CFI yona iphinze futhi edlula yabamba ama-workshops kuma-regions lapho khona beyikhuluma ngoba yona kakhulu ibuke kuthi kubebede losalako angaqualify ukuthola imali zokusebenza. So-ke laba banaleti imali ngoba imali leti qhamuka ngaphandle letinye tato kufanele sathi lokuthi babheke ini. Facebook continues to lead by example in advancing sustainable environmental sustainability. Sitamile nalapho kuphakamisa sacugcutela bomake kakhulu baselibonjeni baba na interest kakhulu nabo bafuna kwakha tikhwama leti tawu replace lama plastics. Siyathi ukuthi uhulumende ufuna kwavala ama plastics sekufuneka tikhwama leti environmental friendly. So sitawuqhubeka sifuna imali yokuthi bakhone batimisele bafuna kwakha tikhwama leti tawu qualify ngale laka environment.
For the first time in Eswatini's legislative history, small businesses now have legal protection. The Citizens Economic Empowerment Act, signed into law in 2024, sets up a boom gate mechanism to shield local SMMEs and prioritize locally made products. A new Ingelo certification will also allow small businesses to access retail markets, which is a major step forward in leveling the playing field. This comes as government rolls out policies to redefine foreign investment, not by ideology but by capital. The act now anchors the national SMME policy alongside Eswatini's broader industrialization, investment and migration strategies. This was highlighted by Mavela Sikwane, head of business transformation at the Facebook annual general meeting.
Silungise something with government through SWAS. Kusinaso producer wena niyamkhumbula na kwetembo kwa SABS. Lobe kuletha confidence on a product wayibona igcotshwe kona. In the context of Swaziland utawubona kunesithombe sengwembe kusangwembe. But sikubite ukuthi ingelo. Wabona le stamp leso nje. Which I will encourage you to do in national SMME policy. In that national SMME policy, it redefines who is an SMME in the context of the country. Ufuna ubel swati inongwane le yalunyulwa la kangwane. In the national investment policy, we redefined an investor in the context of Eswatini. Initially, besifuna kumdefine lo investor nga 30 million new money coming into the country, not 30 million idea. The national immigration policy will bring into practice the boom gate operation. The boom gate operation. Besa yekugcina colleagues, lama policies la supported this new legislation in national industrialization policy. The national industrialization policy itsi qala wakhe lento lo ibona ingena kakhulu eSwatini. Ansilethe tulo nje. Because there is a market for tulo. Takhiwa. Identify lento leto president usifuqe sa AI. AI vele umtshela ngibuyele lokho importwa kakhulu eSwatini kukunikele list.
And that's it for our business news. It's 10 minutes after 2. After the break, we return with the president's remarks. Stay with us.
Have you ever noticed that some people love risk investing in high-wire ventures that pay off big. While others are after something low risk, perhaps a smaller reward too, but predictable. Something that runs like clockwork, you might say. Which brings me to the bonds. In the highly complex and interconnected financial world, bonds play a crucial role. They're part of what makes the global economy tick. The best way to think about bonds is they're actually a kind of loan, money lent by people like you and me so someone else can spend it or invest it. When that someone is the government, the money they borrow can fund all sorts of things, from schools and hospitals to space travel and new technologies. Hopefully, investments that will help the economy grow and create more jobs and greater tax revenue. So, what's in it for me? In return, they promise to pay me back after a fixed period, but with interest. And there are a lot of bonds out there. If you add up all the bonds and everything else governments owe around the world, you get to a pretty big number. The IMF estimates $100 trillion. That's with a T. But the thing about bonds is that anyone can buy them. So let's try one out. I'm going to get a hypothetical 5-year government bond for $100. Let's start the clock. Every year that $100 is invested, it's earning interest, about 4% every year, right on time. Longer-term bonds of 10, 20, or 30 years often pay investors even more. So, while we wait, why are government bonds often seen as a safe investment? Well, because they're backed by the government's taxes, and so they're considered more likely to be paid on time. The trade-off is that they generally offer lower interest rates than bonds issued by corporations. Corporate bonds and investments often leave more room for risk, but offer bigger potential payouts too. 5 years later, I get back my investment with interest. Okay, not bad. If things go right, that is. Sometimes we get a wrench in the system. If the money is poorly spent or a country gets hit by a natural disaster, for instance, the government could then, public bonds can be a predictable win-win. Governments get money to build prosperity, and investors get paid back on time with interest, a tidy sum for their patience, time after time.
Welcome back. You're still watching Market View. Thank you for staying with us. We continue with our program. The president of Facebook, Tam DuPont, has cautioned that Eswatini's trade outlook may come under pressure following the U.S. president's recent decision to impose new tariffs on selected imports. Speaking at the Facebook AGM, DuPont noted that while Eswatini faces a 10% tariff hike, neighboring South Africa has been hit with a steeper 30% levy, a signal of shifting global trade dynamics that could destabilize regional supply chains. This will undoubtedly affect our competitiveness in key markets, he warned, urging local exporters to diversify and brace for possible ripple effects.
Several challenges persist. Recent increase in utility tariffs, namely water and electricity, have directly impacted small business operations. In addition, the introduction of 40% petrol levy has placed further strain on micro, small, and medium enterprises. On the global stage, the newly elected United States administration has implemented unilateral tariffs that have disrupted global trade and value chains. Eswatini has been subjected to a 10% tariff, while our major SACU partner, South Africa, has faced a 30% tariff. These developments will inevitably impact Eswatini's trade dynamics within the South African Customs Union. Facebook played an instrumental role in the finalization and implementation of the Citizen Economic Empowerment Act. This landmark legislation ensures that key sectors of the economy are reserved for participation by indigenous Eswatini, promoting economic inclusivity and reducing dependency on foreign entities. The SMME Policy Implementation 2024. The rollout of the national SMME policy makes a significant milestone in the support and development of local enterprises. The policy provides a structural framework for capacity building, financing, and regulatory support aimed at nurturing small business across the country. In collaboration with UNDP, FESB contributed to the review of Eswatini's national investment policy, previously skewed in favor of foreign direct investment, FDI. The revised framework under APA now places greater emphasis on domestic investments and prioritizes the growth of local businesses. The annual Vusumnotho Expo, which we founded at the time of COVID, and fortunately the Prime Minister understood our plea. FESB successfully hosted the second annual Vusumnotho Expo, a strategic platform for reviewing business action plans and engaging stakeholders. In partnership with the Eswatini Revenue Services, ERS, and SACU, the AEO initiative was implemented to streamline cross-border trade. This program has eased border constraints and improved efficiency for businesses operating within SACU regions.
A new era of AI has started, and it is impressive. With tools such as ChatGPT, Midjourney, or Google Bard, all I really need is to write a prompt, and there you have it. And the results can be pretty convincing. Let me try something. I love elephants, cooking shows, and koalas. And there. Wow. It must be an incredible feeling to be able to create such fantastic things in an instant, right?
I have no feelings about this or anything else. I am neither conscious nor self-aware.
Interesting. Then how are you so artistic?
I may not be conscious, but I am a very sophisticated system for recognizing patterns in a large amount of data. And now I'm also able to generate new patterns.
And that's why you're called generative AI.
Exactly. You got that right.
These AI tools aren't just unleashing creativity. They're already changing science, medicine, and entire industries in ways we don't fully understand yet. And this is only the beginning. But there are dangers too. Generative AI creations can be so convincing that they create a false sense of reality. That includes fake news stories, doctored images, and videos showing things that never really happened. Okay, enough of that. And generative AI is so good at emulating people that it can emulate our biases too. If the only data it has access to is text messages about how cute my cat is, that's all it knows. And every prompt will produce responses about how cute Snuggles is. He is though. Some say that AI could be the key to helping solve the world's biggest problems. Forecasting disaster, preventing famine, even identifying new medical treatments. Others see only the dangers. At the end of the day, generative AI is just a tool, but it's a tool that could change the way we live, the way we work, and the global economy. That raises big questions, especially for us here at the IMF, because it's our job to make sure that the global economy is stable, growing, and working for everyone. Generative AI is already making companies that use and sell AI services billions. That boost in productivity could add trillions in value to the global economy before long. Take customer service agents, for example. A recent study showed that giving them an AI assistant boosted their productivity by 14%. There's a flip side, though. It could end up replacing some jobs entirely. But just like any new technology, AI could create new jobs by inspiring new industries and sectors that we haven't even imagined yet. It's all in how we manage it, with smart regulation and a healthy dose of caution. And that's why here at the IMF, we're doing the policy research to advise governments on how to create regulations that ensure AI is safe and beneficial for everyone.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. It's 22 minutes after 2. This is the last segment of Market View. We're now joined by in-house economist Sana Lesbia for today's financial markets. Very good afternoon, Mrs. Bia. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. So let's start off with international markets, of course. How are the U.S. stock futures looking like now that investors are gauging, or rather making sense of this tariff relief?
Thank you, Lungelele, and thank you for having me. So there is that 90-day pause in terms of the tariff. But what's moving markets today is, the news coming out of Washington just yesterday in terms of reevaluating and pausing those tariffs on the automakers and the parts thereon. So if you look at the big movers in terms of the U.S. markets, they are within the auto sector. So we've seen across the board a bit of gains with the S&P 500, just inching up to that 5,400 mark. And, with the NASDAQ inching up to 16,000 and a few points there. That's purely because there is also that other relief in terms of those tech stocks, because we've seen President Trump pull back on those tech stocks. But if you look at the movements, they are just marginal, with the Dow Jones just barely struggling to reach that 41,000 mark and that 42,000 mark. So it's still a hawkish market where we have investors looking out at what's going to come out of the White House, right? But if you look into the futures markets, it's relatively muted right now because investors are still going to wait for opening bells probably in the next hour. And, when the president wakes up, we're then going to hear what's going to happen within that within those markets and the U.S. markets and those tariffs. And then if you move along to the Eurozone and London again, you'd see that Germany is quite appreciative of those tariff reliefs in terms of the automakers, because Germany's one of their major exports is the cars, the parts that are being utilized within those. And I think what we're seeing coming out of the U.S. just yesterday is an appreciation from the White House that supply chains are not going to move just at the stroke of a pen, because one of the reasons that have been given for shifting and opposing those tariffs is purely because President Trump says it's giving the automakers time to move the supply chain into the U.S. and start manufacturing those parts into the U.S. So he wants to go on with the tariffs, but he does not want to hurt the U.S. economy at present. So that's why we're seeing Germany doing very well, but France is still not moving that much, because we do know that they do export cars, but the U.S. market is not their major export destination. They are most focused within the Eurozone. But what we are interesting to note about London is, just last night we had Vice President Vance coming out to say they are closer to a deal with the UK. So that somehow stabilizes the FTSE 100 and the markets in London, because it seems there is a deal on the cards that's going to come out to the markets and
and it's going to take effect. And also, the movements with those steel companies. Again, we've seen the British government coming in to stabilize that industry. And then when you move across the globe to Asia, again, Japan is leading the gains that we are seeing happening within the Asian markets, purely because Japan is one of the biggest automakers. You've got the likes of your Suzuki, your Toyota, your Nissan, your Honda. They are all Japanese models, and they are being sold across the globe. So that relief in terms of the parts and in terms of the cars themselves somehow gave the Japanese economy a bit of a boost, and investors are a bit optimistic in terms of what's going to happen within that sector, but there really is no timeline. That's one of the major issues there, that we don't know when President Trump feels those automakers have set up in America, he might then just come and impose that tariff. Within China, the mainland, what we are seeing is, again, marginal gains based on the fact that, China is showing strength in terms of the retaliation. And again, President Xi is already trying to swing and get new export destinations. Right now he is in the South Pacific, they're in Asia South Pacific. So now that is giving markets a bit of confidence, and we do know that it's going to be followed by a bit of stimulus. And also we do know that there is that steady play around in terms of what we're going to do with the currencies, which already show in the markets. You'll see when we get to those currencies. And then you move into South Africa. Again, there's a lot of optimism there, purely driven by the fact that gold is edging a bit higher by the day, and for a resource-driven economy, that's good news. And also the issue that we've seen this turnaround within the GNU with Finance Minister Kondongwana, they're being told to go and find alternative sources of that VAT increase, which seems may not come into effect on the 1st of May, which also bodes well for the domestic markets. However, we've not seen any movements within the local economy. So the Eswatini Stock Exchange remains muted at 488.49 in terms of all share volumes. And then in terms of our commodities, you can see that gold is still reflective of that uncertainty within Wall Street and within the commodities. They're, gaining, going back to the 3,300 mark. But Brent crude somehow losing because there really isn't any clear direction in terms of what is going to happen to global demand after all is said and done. So it's sitting there at that 64.85 per barrel. Then the currencies, we're seeing relative strength of the lilangeni across the globe. When you're looking at it against the dollar, it's now back at 18.83. We have that GNU effect there, and also there is that effect of this ongoing trade war. So, countries were during a trade war tend to also play around with their currencies, just to counter the effects of the tariff. You then tend to lower the value of your currency. So we're seeing the US dollar losing against the lilangeni, the euro losing against the lilangeni, and the Japanese yen losing against the lilangeni, taking away that exchange rate advantage we thought we were going to have, because now with the new 10% tariff, which cuts across the board, we did expect that the weaker currency was going to somehow offset those movements in terms of our competitiveness in the global markets. Lungelele, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Well, there you have it. And this is how the markets are reacting today, this afternoon. This is our final segment. We did have Sunny Spear for today's market analysis. As always, we'll see him again tomorrow for Nedbank Business Watch. It was a pleasure having you. Join us today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a lovely day.